I would also just at some point like to hear you guys' experience with student loans. I was fortunate; my parents were able to pay for my college education, so I didn't have to do student loans. I know a lot of friends who have. Do you feel like the system was predatory for you? Do you feel like it was worthwhile and you're glad the system is in place?
The system is absolutely predatory. And I have a great example, I think. So for me personally, I applied through FAFSA, I think, to get assistance with paying for school. My parents said they weren't going to pay for my school. They also couldn't, straight up.
What is FAFSA?
FAFSA is the federal student aid program for just for all people applying for college.
Gotcha,
the idea being that if you are low enough income, this program also enables you to pay for school basically through a grant, I want to say, or a scholarship rather. So if you fall below a certain level of income, but you're able to get into a school, then it will give you money outright that isn't a loan. But most of the time, FAFSA is a way to get loans if you fall in a more middle income, upper, lower to middle class background, basically. And that's what I would call my family at the time is middle class. So my parents did not have enough money to pay for my school. But according to the FAFSA application, the government said they had enough money to pay for school, which means that they'll offer you loans. And what they do is at a personal level, because you don't have much of a credit history at that age, they offer you a small amount of loans individually. And then if you need more, your parents can be the guarantor for a way higher additional loan. And then I maxed out the loans that I could get personally, basically. And that is what allowed me to pay for most of my tuition both years that I was at university. Because my state, in Washington, there's a program where you can go to community college during high school. So I finished 2 years, and that was basically free, which is sick. And I finished 2 years of college in high school, graduated, and then only had to go to university for 2 years.
Yep.
And so that was how I saved enough money to go to school. It's I got my 2 years of student loans for that. The problem with that system is I didn't really know, and I think I had a better idea than most of my peers did at the time, that how much money that was and how I would pay it back. And it wasn't even, in the grand scheme, was not that much. I had $15,000 in student loans. And that was 3/4 of my tuition each of those years, I want to say. My tuition each year was 11 or 12K.
Yeah.
And then you have all of your living expenses on top of that. And the issue is that, one, that was a really limited amount of loans, and my parents weren't even willing to sign for additional loans anyway, if I recall. And looking at all the students around me, I picked an affordable in-state option with a limited amount of loans that I could take out as an individual, and I still had to work. I had to work in college to pay off the rest of my living expenses as well. Right.
Because you had a smaller loan.
Yeah. Whereas most of the people around me, a lot of them applying to out of state schools, which cost way more, even if you're going to a public institution, right? If I had gotten into Berkeley, which I didn't, I would have had to pay, I think, $35 or $40K a year in tuition as an out of state student.
So wild.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
At 18, to be signing up for $120,000 plus in loans.
Yeah. And it's such a huge financial commitment that you have very little ability to understand the scope of what you're signing at the time.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
College is where you're supposed to figure out what you want to do. So you don't know whether you're going to be going into, if you're going into, I don't know, physics or something where you're likely to be able to pay that off.
Yeah.
Sure, but most people don't know until they get there.
I think you're just pressured. A lot of people are pressured their entire life that they have to go to college. College is your way to success. Get into college by any means, do all these things to get into a good college, and then you spend whatever money it takes to go there. And oftentimes that can be an extraordinary amount of money. The particularly predatory thing that I saw was a lot of those people looking at out-of-state schools or private schools, one, were down to pay for that amount of tuition somehow, and those amounts are way, way too high to begin with. It doesn't make any sense that school costs that much, and it's only gotten more expensive since I was applying, right? Then to top it off, I think I remember my girlfriend at the time, she was getting accepted into all these private schools in the Pacific Northwest that had these expensive tuitions, right? But those private schools, they hand out they hand out scholarships like it's no business. So imagine you got into some private school that costs $40,000, $50,000 a year in tuition, but then they tell you, hey, we're giving you a scholarship for $20,000 a year. Well, what does that mean? It means your tuition is still $30,000 a year. And I remember her and a bunch of people around me being so excited by the scholarships they were getting.
Yeah.
And even at 18, I was like, this makes no sense. You are getting, it's like, I mean, maybe respectfully, I was looking at a lot of kids who I knew academically were like fine, basically. Like they're not putting in that. It's not like
Give us names
and GPAs.
and they're getting massive scholarships to go to private schools that set their bar for tuition so high to begin with.
It's like a fake discount.
It's like giving a coupon
Black
to
Friday sale. Yeah,
exactly.
It's a Black Friday
fake sale. And I think that's the misleading part is like there's all these mechanisms in place to like sell kids on the experience of college and sign off on this giant number that they don't deal with until a later part of their life because you have no way to understand the scope of that decision at the time. Namely, not only in the money, but like not knowing what you actually want to do with your life.
Right.
But all of these like societal pressures are like pushing you in that direction at the same time.
And then it's the type of loan with the compounding interest that is the worst possible loan if you aren't able to pay it off early and like consistently be hitting interest. So the whole thing is
I do want to bring one little nugget of this that is worth talking about, which is that a part of this comes from policies that were at least good in theory that may have backlash, which is the idea, similar to the housing crisis, which is, the idea that everyone needs to go to college. It's a really good thing. Mm-hmm. If you're back in the 60s and 70s, college tuition was relatively cheap. And it's because nobody would give a student this kind of loan because they don't think they'll pay it back unless they had a clear plan for what they were going to do. But then the idea was we need to get more people to go to college. So we're going to make student loans federally guaranteed. We're going to back it up. We're going to basically give a loan to anyone who wants one. And what that did was it allowed anyone with any plan to go to college and take out basically as much money as they wanted. And schools respond to that by saying, okay, well, if all of our counterparties in this negotiation have an infinite bank and they're 18 and they're dumb, we can just keep raising prices on everything. It doesn't matter. And that's what they did. And so we've had 30 years of, again, price appreciation. And as the amount goes higher, people just borrow more and more and more because it's been guaranteed. So I want, I think there is a part of this where I think an idea that was made in good spirit, in good theory, with good idea, has had a pretty profound negative consequence on every student later. And I want to have thoughts on that.
The one thing I come back to a lot, and I know that there's talks about this, and so maybe this has already been pushed or considered in some way I'm not aware of. But the thing that fundamentally feels important to me is that colleges should have some degree of accountability for whether the degree they offer is going to be able to cover the loan in any way. And like they can't be fully responsible for the life of a student that comes through their college. But the idea that a colleges say, hey, we'll charge you $200,000 to come to this private university, and we'll happily sell you a degree that there's no real evidence you're going to be able to pay that back in any way, shape, or form, with no due diligence of is this person, like, is their family able to cover this in any way? Like, is there any way? And you're just setting them up in this horrible situation. And the university is just like, sure, man, come on through. We'll take $200K from your loans and we'll ship you off. And they have no responsibility at all. I don't know how that works. The mechanics of that would be extremely difficult and maybe overly burdensome on universities.
Well, they're selling it to the government. Like, who's giving the $200K? It's usually the government system program that's like giving you your guaranteed loans. No bank would give you that $200K because they don't think you'll pay it back.
Yeah,
is the idea, or they'll give it to you at an exorbitant interest rate that you probably wouldn't take. So I
feel like any subsidy system like that. I don't know if
like
you would call a loan a
subsidy.
Yeah. Demand subsidy is you just participate in all the colleges like raising the prices at the same time. That's why I feel like you need to push towards something that is basically near free or like taxpayer funded.
Yeah.
But even a move to a system like I think Australia's student loans basically work with, I think schooling there is cheaper to begin with, at least cheaper than the US, but their loans don't, the interest doesn't build until you have a job post college. Like the interest is frozen, and then you don't have to make payments until you have a job of a certain income threshold either. So a system in place that like the loans still need to be paid back eventually, but only until the economic conditions of your situation post-college actually meet like a certain threshold, which I think would be an improvement on this system.
Yeah, no, that sounds way better, because that at least alleviates the doom scenario where a person comes out of college, they don't know what they want to do or can't find a job in those first couple years, and then they're just building debt that whole time. Yeah, I mean, that sounds way better.
Yeah, or college is free and paid for by the government, but it's at a certain, even if the government said, hey, we're going to give everyone who wants to go to college a chance, we're going to give you 20 grand or whatever it is. If it's a flat fee, then some colleges will adapt to that and keep that their price.
Right.
But if you make it so you can take out any loan at any amount and we'll guarantee it, then of course the other party in that negotiation is going to just raise their price every year constantly, because they have nothing to lose. They don't care that you're in debt.
I wish there was some, I don't know the mechanics, but I wish there was some kind of pressure on universities to bring down prices. Because right now there's no incentive for them to do that.
I think public universities, or at the very least, like community colleges, need to be free, basically. They need to be at near no cost for you to, and offer all of the same, facility. I went to I'm sure you guys feel this way, maybe not, but when you go to a big state school, like I went to the University of Washington, my school was incredible in terms of resources available to me. Yeah. And I really liked it there. I think if those types of institutions are basically free and are taxpayer funded, then you create something that is super competitive in the rest of the space for all the remaining private schools, kind of what we were talking about last time. Yeah. Like it forces all of the remaining private institutions to offer something particularly valuable in order to pay to go there. And I think that's really important. I think also something, I'm not going to pretend that my university experience was on par with my community college experience, but I do think there's an issue in the US of in the culture of pushing everyone to go to college, there is kind of a stigma around going to something like a community college or a technical college or into trades or programs. There's this cultural shift that I'm not really sure how you start to create. I think it's kind of happening now when you talk to people.
That's what I heard.
Of understanding that college isn't the be all end all fits everybody scenario. I do think it is really, really important for everybody to have some type of additional education in their lives and make that widely available. But it coming in the form of what university usually presents itself as is maybe the bad part. Because I don't think it's bad or shameful to go to a community college, especially considering how much cheaper it was.
Yeah.
I basically got the first 2 years of my post high school education basically for free because of a state program. Mm. And it saved me literally, if we did the math, it saved me, the 18-year-old Aiden, $40,000. That's what it saved me.
Life-changing.
And not in loans, not in grants or scholarships or whatever. I just did not have to pay that $40,000. It was a huge part of why I'm here where I'm at now, because I was just 2 years further in my education because of that. So I'd look to things like that. And then the remaining, private universities, whatever value they can present, are forced to price themselves at something more agreeable. And I think more programs and money encouraging people to go into technical or trade programs is really important too. There was a video I was watching about this. I want to say 6 months ago from Polymatter has a view, a breakdown of US education over the decades. And somebody, please dig into this more. Don't just take me at face value here. But there's a stat that's been cited a lot, not in this video, but in general. I'm sure you've heard that your lifetime earnings with a college degree compared to lifetime earnings of people who just have a high school education, right? And you can see the difference in the graph. And this is supposed to be the proof of how a college education is so valuable. But this, what this accounts for is all of the people that have their college degree, completed it and got into their career, and compares against, it completely forgoes the population of people that go into college, pay for a few years, and then drop out, which is a huge amount of people. It's an incredible portion of everybody that goes to college is people who just don't finish. Yeah, and those people actually are financially worse off than people who just started working after high school. which is interesting. And I think we have a problem in the US where so many people are flooding into like traditional 4-year institutions with like no plan, paying all this money when there's so many more avenues for success we could encourage. And to top it all off, all of them should be more like affordable and encouraged options. Not even affordable. Like I would advocate for free, but like using Australia as an example, that's a step in the right direction too. Like policy changes to loans like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you in the comments have your own, especially if you're in a different country, student loan system, I would love to hear more about what you think works and doesn't around the world.
Yeah.
I think it's something I want to dig more into. And then also, last thing you said, and we should go to the next topic, but I have heard, and I've seen this in my chat, and I've seen this from articles I've read, is that there's a stigma changing, especially among Gen Z men, towards trades, in that it's becoming more socially almost acceptable or cool or something to talk about going into other than the college. I think the college thing, people are waking up, at least in some 18-year-old way, to the idea this is kind of a raw deal. Like people are starting to realize they're seeing older siblings, people that have graduated and can't find a job that are paying these student loans. There's a greater awakening that like many of these are not great deals, not guaranteed success in the way they thought they were. And so there is a social shift happening. And I want to hear more about that. So if you have thoughts. However, you have a topic that's about government actually